I looked up and I noticed the palms of the hands of guardian angels. They're looking at me. And they asked me in one short phrase, "Do you trust us?" I said, "Yes." And within 2 seconds, I was in the street and I got hit by a speeding car.
Guy here. You might be able to hear my voice, my throat's a little bit sore. I do apologize in advance. We had a very big event on the weekend where we actually launched our advanced 4-hour workshop. It's something we've been wanting to do for a while, because if you follow the podcast and you actually listen to the intros that I put in, we run 5-day retreats, and they are absolutely phenomenal. But we also go up and down the country here in Australia and New Zealand now as well, where we do 4-hour events where we introduce the work and people can come. But it's more experiential because we feel that's the way people is the best to learn, and that's where the rubber meets the road. But with the retreats, we can go so much further because we're held in a container, we're eating amazing food, the connections that are being built are phenomenal. But it's been on our minds for such a long time. How can we start to bring some of the more advanced techniques into the 1 day? So we did the maiden voyage of our advanced 4-hour workshop, which was awakening the chakras, building upon the fundamentals that we do in our reconnected workshop. And it was phenomenal. It was just mind blowing. And if you do happen to be one, we had about 130 people come through for the day. And if you do happen to be one of them listening to this now, I just send you much love. I'm still buzzing from the weekend. It was incredible what we witnessed in. So if any of that interests you, there will be links below. Come and join us somewhere. It's just incredible. I just wish everybody could experience this at least once in their life. So, and then build that muscle. Anyway, I've gone right off on a tangent. If you still listen to me, I appreciate it. I try and keep these intros short normally. But Garry is an awesome dude. He's got a phenomenal story. I really liked the guy, connected with him, and his near-death experience is pretty wild, actually, and we get into it all today. He also talks about the predictions that came from that back in 1977 and how they still come in true to this day as well. It's a wild ride, wild story. If you listen on YouTube, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. Let me know where in the world you are as well. Keep connecting. Much love from me, and hopefully I'll meet you somewhere in person, somewhere along the line, and just come up and give me a hug. I always appreciate it. Anyway, see you soon. Garry, welcome to the podcast, my man.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, brother.
All the way from Austin, Texas. Hey, fantastic. It's actually one place that I've always wanted to go. I work with an American. He's from Indiana, but I've heard good things. The first question I want to ask you, Garry, is if you were at an intimate dinner party right now and you sat next to a complete stranger and they asked you what you did for a living or do for a living, how would you respond?
Well, I've been a musician most of my life and a psychic. I don't play music anymore. I'm a little older, hard to tote the equipment around. I did it for 45 years. I actually have been doing psychic readings since about 1972 or 3. And in the last 10, 15 years, that's pretty well been my main focus, my income, my interest. And especially in these incredibly changing times, I'm very lucky. I've had some incredibly psychic experiences. And so I like to share that information and help people. And I'm grateful that I can, because I've been through my share of curveballs and challenges.
Well, I look forward to hearing them today. So let me get this right. You were a working musician and a psychic at the same time, and they were going hand in hand. Is that right?
Not necessarily hand in hand. A lot of musicians didn't know I was a psychic. A lot of psychics didn't know I was a musician. But I traveled all over. I lived in Europe, actually, in the 90s, from 93 to 2000. Traveling, playing music. And like I said, I started giving readings early 70s. That's always been a part of my life. But I gave up traveling and performing about 15 years ago. I got tired of hearing myself. I'm not a great singer. I became a good entertainer, but I'm not a good singer. I milked that cow for all it was worth, so to speak. You
Fair
know.
enough. What came first, the psychic abilities, I'm assuming, or the music? Or
Well, I started playing music when I was like 15, before the Beatles came out. Um, Started learning lead guitar from Freddie King, Albert King, um, BB King, a lot of guitar players. And this was in the late 60s. When the Beatles first came out, I remember seeing them on Ed Sullivan, watching George Harrison play lead, and I thought, wow, I'm playing the right notes, exactly the same position he is. So by the time the Beatles came out and the Stones, I'd learned just about every song I could, get most of the records I could, and kept up with it pretty well. Played all through high school, played all through college. Wasn't planning on necessarily being a professional musician or a psychic for that matter. But I graduated in 1970 from Texas Tech here, electrical engineering, and it was all defense work. And I was a war protester. It was Vietnam. And so I served 2 years as a conscientious objector and then got out of that and it was still all defense work. And I went, well, I don't want to join the defense industry. So I decided to play music. About the same time, I was learning a lot about giving readings.
right. And when did the
So
sorry to jump in there. When did the near-death experience happen then? Was that something that came later on? Were you already exploring the psychic abilities you speak of?
yeah, I was, excuse me, I was already very interested in psychic ability. Got interested in that in the late 60s. Uh, Actually, I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy. I was, always fascinated by Christ and God and Jesus. Um, Not necessarily the Catholic Church. I left the church about the time puberty hit, but I never lost interest in psychic ability or God, and started reading a lot of Edgar Casey in college. That really stimulated my curiosity. First time I read anything that actually made sense about why we're here, what happens, life, reincarnation. And to this day, I read Edgar Cayce. He's one of my main, say, areas of interest, input, confirmation, and so forth. In 1977 is when I had the near-death experience. I had no idea what was happening, but over a period of a couple of days, life went from normal life to I started picking up everything that was about to happen. Who was calling on the phone? A stranger would walk by, could pick up all their thoughts. Um, Two roommates. I was living with two roommates at the time. One of them was very concerned about me because I started getting rather strange. My whole interest in things shifted from what I would normally be interested in to picking up things about people, about
So
situations.
this was before you had the near-death experience, like a couple of days before all this started to come.
About a week
Wow.
before, about a week before. This is actually the 1977, end of January. I'd quit a band. I needed some time off. I was traveling a lot. And I remember January 1977, the last day, January 31st, or about that time, I started picking up things about my roommates, about people. Started when the phone would ring, I could tell who was going to call. And within 24 hours, life turned into a completely different world. I had no idea why or where I was headed or what was going on, but I couldn't turn it off. And it kept accelerating. And by the second and third day, I was picking up things that just blew my mind. I couldn't tell if I was witnessing things or creating them. I'd look at a stranger 2 blocks away and I would think, scratch your head and point up to that building, and they would do it. And I would think, did I know that was going to happen and pick it up? Or did I make that happen? Or maybe a combination of both. I could not tell the difference between witness and creator.
Wow.
That's when I started realizing things are changing fast.
And had you done anything to instigate this up until that point, or was this something that was just coming on naturally, or do you think it was your interest in Edgar Casey and reading these books at that time? Like, what was causing this to happen?
Well, I found out later what was causing it. At the time, I had no idea. It was just pure input, pure sensation. And like I said, living on a different world all of a sudden. I was rather both terrified and intrigued. I got really, really paranoid and scared because I didn't know what was happening or why I couldn't turn it off. But at the same time, I started feeling extremely gifted, lucky, fortunate, intuitive. A different side of reality came through, and I didn't know why. I'll give you an
Yes.
example. I wrote a book, The Second Eternity, that describes this episode in my life. For example, my roommate and I went to a restaurant one time, and he's very concerned about me. And he said, how are things going for you now? I said, well, I can't really explain. I'll show you. I looked at two ladies at a table far over the far corner of the restaurant, and I told him, I'll have the brunette write me a letter. And he said, what? I said, I'm going to have her write me a letter because there was no neutral. I was either picking things up or, in my mind, interjecting things into the universe, which I never even thought about before this started happening. And 10 minutes later, when the ladies left, the brunette, who I kept thinking, write me a letter. That seemed nice and harmless because, again, there's no neutral. And as she walked by our table, she dropped a napkin on in big, bold letters. She had written, why are you doing this to me? That freaked me out. I wanted to charge out of the restaurant and ask her what she experienced, but I was too petrified, too startled, because I started affecting other people, not harmfully, but there was no neutral. Like I said, I was picking things up. I'd walk down the street and I could feel people's thoughts. And I never even thought about this, but it just came on like a freight train. By the second, third day, I was in a different world.
So, what do you think was happening then? Like, from, you living your life now and looking back at that time, how would you explain that was happening, that phenomena was coming on?
Well, I couldn't at the time, but I went through a week of this. And at the end of this week, I was pretty terrified. Uh, Moral of the story, or the gist of the story, the big change, after a week of this, I was racing down Guadalupe Street here in Austin, Texas. I was crying. I was scared. I was praying. I couldn't turn it off. I didn't know what was happening. But through this period, I kept feeling some sort of spiritual guides watching me, like I wasn't alone, because I felt pretty alone. And I kept feeling them, and they seemed to name themselves the monitors, or I seemed to think of them in terms of the monitors. Didn't see them, but I could feel them. And after a week of this, I was terrified. I was charging down Guadalupe Street, just had to get out. It was cold, it was windy, I was terrified, and I started crying and screaming, and people on the street were just, looking at me like, what the hell's going on with him? Well, I didn't know either. And big wide circle around me. The fear got so intense, and then suddenly, instantly, it disappeared. I felt warm. I looked up and I saw this huge light right above my head, about 6 feet. And I looked around at all these people in the street who were watching me, and none of them saw it, and I didn't care. I looked back up at this light again, and it was coming down from a crystal table. It was about that thick. And I looked up, and I noticed the palms of the hands of these 7 white-robed, grayish-robed guardian angels. And I realized these are the monitors. They're looking at me. And they asked me in one short phrase, do you trust us? And I said, man, I don't understand what's going on. I've been going through here, blah, 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 blah. Shh. Do you trust us? I said, yes. And within 2 seconds, you'll have to read about it in the book, hard to describe. I was in the street and I got hit by a speeding car.
Oh, shit.
And as soon as I hit the car, I was outside my body seeing my body getting tumbled over by the car, burnt the windshield. And then the whole city of Austin turned into a little dot. And I started expanding outward in all directions, like the surface of a balloon. And very quickly, I had no awareness of myself anymore, just sensation. And as I expanded and expanded and expanded, I went to the edge of the universe. I saw this realm of consciousness that I call the colors, or it seemed to name itself the colors. There was a level of consciousness that when we come in at birth, we pass through this, and that level of consciousness gives us the ability to use our senses and our brain and so forth to understand who we are, where we came from. Again, I had no awareness of myself at this point, but the sensation was beautiful. The fear had completely gone, just like turning a light on and off instantaneously. And I had never felt such a beautiful sensation. And I came out of this universe, and it seemed like one star in a very starry sky. There's infinite universes. That's the one I came out of. And all these universes seemed to roll up into a big tunnel of light. And I went through this tunnel of light, came out the other side, and I was in this infinite blue void that was the mind of God. It was infinite. It was all possibilities. There was nothing more powerful. It either existed, which it does, and everything exists and everything's possible, or it wouldn't have existed and nothing would exist. Well, guess which one happened? It existed. And I noticed after feeling like I was kind of taking a tour around this infinite mind, at its very core was infinite love. And that's what a lot of people who've had near-death experiences describe as the feeling of infinite love. And it was beautiful. And then it seemed like I was observing it rather than being at one with it. And I was pulled back through this tunnel of light, back toward this universe, toward this solar system, toward this galaxy. And as I collapsed inward, which is how souls come in at birth, they go out when they die, you go out in all directions. When you come in at birth, you collapse inward and take an impression of the whole universe, and certainly of this galaxy and this solar system. And I didn't know quite where I was headed. I knew where I just was beautiful. I was a little bit apprehensive, but I saw my body. Well, first I saw these pictures as I got closer to Earth. 3 distinct categories, I suppose, like flashing cards. The first is what we're going through now with the whole world. Tension, polarization, changes in Earth, in people. And as we know right now, every country is having some sort of revolution. Everything was maximum now. And it was kind of scary. The next series of pictures were about the world to come, the Age of Aquarius, where things were really beautiful. And that was calming. I still didn't know who I was or where I was headed, but the next series of pictures were about me. I didn't know it, showing me things into the future. I saw 9/11. I saw COVID. I saw these earth changes. I saw the polarization in our society. But when I finally realized, wow, I'm seeing pictures about me, I saw my body laying in the middle of the street and people screaming and hollering. And I jumped into my body and jumped to my feet because I wasn't even hurt. I didn't get a scratch. The whole car's banged in, the windshield's broken, people are screaming and hollering. The driver, actually, the first thing I remember was this red hair all over my face. This driver was shaking me, screaming. Man, I tried to stop. I couldn't stop. Blah, 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 blah. And I just been to heaven. So I was not bothered at all. What I was bothered by is his hair in my face and him trying to calm me down. I jumped to my feet, started asking all these people around me who were watching me if they had seen these group of monitors above me. And of course, I looked crazy.
So
Go
your
ahead.
body wasn't banged up at all after that?
No, not at all. In fact, in the book, I printed the police reports. Yeah, I wasn't hurt at all. Excuse me. And I wasn't amazed. It just seemed, from where I'd just been, this is just a little miracle. Not getting hurt, no pain at all. And the people around me were panicked. I didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go home. This is too heavy. So as I started to walk home, they said, no, stay, man. The ambulance, the police are coming. And I thought, yeah, I'll just hang around for a minute and explain to them what I'd been through. Oh, right. When the cops came, the ambulance came, the police came, they're looking around for a body in the middle of the street that's covered in blood. And I wasn't covered in blood, wasn't even hurt. I was standing up talking to people. And so I said, I'm the person you're looking for. And all the pedestrians in the street, the people who've been watching me, were pointing to me, said, yep, it's him. And they rushed up to me and asked me, how are you standing, just like you, on my feet. I tried to explain to them why I wasn't hurt, what I'd been through. That made no sense whatsoever. And I can understand. I wouldn't have believed me. But pretty quickly, I realized that nobody's going to believe this, and I wouldn't have believed it either, and that's okay. That's fine. But they wouldn't let me go home. They insisted to take me to the hospital, to the emergency room. They did. And they x-rayed me and checked me out. I wasn't hurt. They couldn't keep me there. So they rolled me over in a corner of the emergency room, and 10, 15 minutes later, this man came walking in, who I'd had a premonition about. Actually, I had premonitions about this whole incident, And the man was a psychiatrist, and I knew all about him and his family and so forth, and that blew his mind. And I asked him if I could just go home, and they said, no, we're going to have to examine you in a psychiatric hospital. So they took me to jail until they could get order protective custody to take me to a psychiatric hospital.
Do you know how fast that vehicle was going when it hit you?
It seemed like it was going faster than the other cars because it was ahead of the other cars. And 35, 40, probably 45, it was going pretty fast. And of course, the driver, that's why he was really freaked out. I wasn't. I just been to heaven. I was mind blown.
So a couple of questions for you then. Why do you talk about the premonitions of 9/11 and COVID and things like that come in? Why do you think you were being shown them in that experience, like at that moment in time? Have you ever reflected on that?
Well, I was very curious about why I had this experience and why I saw this. Absolutely. And for months, I kept asking my guides, the monitors, spirituality, why me? I mean, this is a beautiful voyage, beautiful trip, pretty bizarre. But why did I get this? I mean, when you go to infinite mind, there's nothing more powerful, nothing more beautiful, nothing more stimulating. And it was about 8 months later, my guides appeared. I didn't see them this time. They were in my front yard. I was playing my guitar on the porch, and once again asking, why me? And all of a sudden, I could feel them there. I couldn't see them this time. I only saw them once. But I could feel them there, and they shot this light in my head that they started talking at the same time. These words they were talking were looking like screen credits going off in the distance. And time stopped, traffic stopped, the wind stopped. And this seemed like it happened instantaneously, but quite slowly, so I could get the point. And they basically said, you had this experience because you always wanted to know. You always asked since you were a young kid. You were prepared. You could handle the truth. We took you, brought you back. That's why that car accident. So I'd have a bunch of grounding agents take care of me, which indeed with family and police, psychiatric hospital, courts, judges. I couldn't escape and go out to infinite mind permanently because if I could have stayed there, I probably would have. but I didn't get that choice. I was drawn back. So yeah, it was 8 months later they finally told me why I had it. And they also warned that, you're pretty intense. You have to watch your diet, you have to watch your balance, you have to um, and so I was very, very, very grateful for finally getting the explanation. That was the second most beautiful day in my life. The first was when I went to Infinite Mind and back, and the second day, 8 months later, was why I went there. They explained it to me, so I'm
Oh, wow.
grateful.
And is that when you said that was the first time you saw them and the only time that 8 months later, the guides?
Yeah, I didn't see him that time. I felt him eight
Right.
months later. The first time I
Oh,
saw him
okay.
very
What
clearly.
do they look like?
All right, I didn't need to see him again. I don't need to go there again. That was profound enough, convincing enough. I don't need a second Voyager lesson. I mean, I'd take it. It's not required of me. Uh, and like I said, months later, they explained that I had this experience because I wanted to know. Moral of the story, be
Mm.
curious, ask. But from that moment forward, I realized how real our guides are. And I asked them to help me find gigs and cars and places to live and blah, 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 blah.
What did they look like? Can you recall? Like when you saw them?
Yeah, they were kind of white robed, almost like monks. They seemed rather big. There were 7 of them. They were sitting around this glass, well, crystal table. The light was coming down from their palms. At first, it just looked like a big spotlight. And I remember thinking, this is about 6 feet over my head, physically, right there. If I had a ladder, I could get up and touch the table. So first, it just looked like a light. I looked around and none of the people acknowledged it or saw it. I didn't care. I saw it. I looked up again, and this light was coming down from the palms of their hands, and they looked like they were wearing kind of white robes, grayish white robes. Their faces were not clear. They looked kind of just grayish, as if their faces didn't matter. They seemed, I guess, from the size of them, because they seemed big, they seemed kind of masculine, but they really weren't masculine or feminine. But they were just beautiful and profound, and they knew everything that was going on with me. They helped me. They made sense. And again, I never saw them again, but 8 months later, I felt them. And that's when they explained to me why I had this experience. And I have since seen 9/11 and COVID and all this chaos in the political system throughout the whole world. Every country's going through a revolution. I saw this way back then.
Did they show you anything of the future that's yet to have come at this point in time?
I saw a lot of the future. I saw it so quickly, just like millions of cards, like, fanning through a deck of
Mm.
cards or something. Um, and I can't remember them all. There's too much too fast. But when I see things happen, I realize, wow, I saw that 45 years ago. Uh, 9/11, I was over in Europe. I was a musician. I was on a cruise ship coming into Sweden about 4 in the afternoon. Some people on the table said, man, I think y'all just got hit by a terrorist attack. This is 9/11. I ran down to the crew room, looked at the TV. That second plane came through. I looked around, saw all these people in this blue uniform, and realized I had seen that picture on that TV with these people in blue uniforms 25 years earlier. So I didn't remember it until it happened. But once it happened and I was watching, I went, wow, I've seen this too. I saw COVID-19. It looked like an oil spill going around the whole earth.
Ah,
I saw, and this is 1977, when people in the United States couldn't go out and buy a military style weapon. But I saw these young men carrying AK-47s shooting people, schools, hospitals. I couldn't believe that, but sure enough, in the last 20 years, it has happened, sadly. So there's a lot of change, transformation, weird things, intensity going on. But I always tell people what we're seeing is all the flaws in ourselves and in our systems so we can fix them, you know? So it's not in vain. We're not being tortured. We are being challenged. We are getting to see what needs to be fixed, but we have the choice to pay attention, make it a better world. I can't stop all this chaos. Believe me, I would if I could, you know? But we can only do so much. So I felt very lucky because now that we're going through all this, it makes sense to me. I'm not going crazy over it. Okay, this is the world revolution, and it'll be going on for 50 years, 75 years, till we get to a better spot,
Are you?
which
I was
we
going to say,
will.
what are your thoughts on that? I mean, there's a lot of noise on the internet at the moment, and a lot of conversations going around that we're actually at a very pivotal time in history right now. It's happening.
We
I'd
are.
love to hear your
We,
thoughts on that and where you think we are going as a society.
we're moving into the age of
When
Aquarius,
is that?
and that's a 2,000, 2,500, 2,300 year period. We're moving out of the age of Pisces, and it's not a quick break. It's a 150-year transition from one age to the
Right.
next. And we're right in the middle of that transition. So when we reach the age of Aquarius, the world will be a lot calmer, nicer, better, more healthy. Now, I don't know if there'll be 1 million people on the planet left or 20 billion. I don't know. But we will enter that next phase of humanity and evolution one way or another. It's just going to happen. I just happen to see it and feel very blessed about it. And a lot of people, psychics, writers talk about it. Edgar Casey talked about it. So I'm not the only one who has seen these signs. Um, I saw them way back in '77. And now that I see all this chaos in real time, breaking news every 30 seconds, I'm not shocked. I'm disappointed. I wish the world were not going through such a crazy period. I wish people weren't so hateful, greedy, selfish, but we have to go through that individually and collectively to learn how to not be there. Yeah. If that makes
It
sense.
does. It does. And that's the challenge, isn't it? We get so consumed with society and the constant bombardment of negativity and fear that's just been channeled through every TV station, radio. It's like a hypnosis that we don't even. It's especially if we've been born into. I mean, I remember I was born in the '70s, so I kind of remember the video being introduced and the news was on at like 6 o'clock at night, and we had the 10 o'clock news, and that was it. I think there wasn't this
Mm-hmm.
constant, but now we're amongst it all the time, and unless we actually make a choice to develop our awareness and consciousness and start to lean into a different way of being, we're just going to get swept away with the negativity that's out there.
I couldn't have said it better. It's exactly what we're going through. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine way back in '77 all the insanity we're going through, but here it is in real time happening. And you said it perfectly. We are going through this transformation. Everybody in the world feels it. You may not get breaking news, but you know that, like in Africa, it ain't raining like it did 10 years ago. I mean, the seasons, the land, the economics, the politics, the environment, it's all being shaken up and shifted so we can see what we can do to make it better. And some people choose to do that. A lot of people don't, but that's free will. That's just the way it rolls. Everybody's got their own karmic reason for being here, their own karmic plot, you know. Even Hitler, as evil as that was, he showed the whole world how crazy and harmful one crazy man can be. Which, by the way, I developed a theory called the one nut theory. One nut can screw up anything. It's my one nut theory. It's proven itself over and over and over too.
Right. Have you ever wondered why you had to have such a, like you had to be hit by a car to have that experience? If the premonition was coming on and then your guides appear and literally ask you, "Do you trust us?" And you say yes, and then you get hit by the car. I mean, it feels like quite an extreme experience to have, that
Well,
heavenly experience that you had.
it was a heavenly experience, but they told me later, 8 months later, that they used the car, the head-on collision, as a means to get me out of my body completely, to start the launch into infinite mind, knowing that when I came back, that I would be grounded. Cops, ambulance, police. I couldn't just voyage off and go back to infinite mind and stay there. I had, a life to live. So yeah, it was sort of the way to get me out of my body. And when I came back, to make sure that I was taken care of. I was, because I had to go through courts and psychiatric hospital, family and emergency room, and blah 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 blah, which never bothered me really, because I wouldn't have believed myself. I was trying to explain to the police and the cops and the ambulance and the courts and family and friends what had gone on, why I did this, why it happened, where I'd been. And, nobody could believe me at the time. Now, there's a lot of people who've had near-death experiences, and it's a lot easier to believe, to understand. But at the time, I didn't know the term. I didn't know that's what I had. It was 10, 15 years later before I started realizing, oh, I had one of these near-death experiences, out-of-body experience.
So you were telling people it was happening. You were happy to tell people this is what just happened to me, but nobody was listening, in a nutshell.
Yeah, they couldn't grasp it. They couldn't understand it. I could easily understand that. I mean, I wouldn't have believed myself either, back then.
How real did that experience feel when you're having it? Did it feel like, you're in a dream and then you're back on reality and you're waking up, or did it feel more real than this reality? Like how did that experience feel to you?
It felt more real than anything. And if anything, this life is the dream. This is the haziness. This is the confusion. This is the gray area. But that was crystal clear, beyond comprehension. I've never seen anything so clear or that made so much sense to me as that, because it was a voyage to infinite mind with guides. It's almost like my guides were like a tour guide. They took me there and brought me back. So that was the clear part. What was also clear is the transformation that we're all going through now, and why. So we can see, I always say, so we can see the holes in the boat. You can't fix the holes in the boat if you don't see where they are. Boy, we are getting an education 24/7, 365. And you can heed the call and grow and evolve and do your part to make the world better, or not. But there's no neutral. There's just no neutral. Everybody's affected one way or another.
It's like the light switch on the room is just getting brighter and brighter, and all the shadows and the cockroaches are having to crawl out of it. And then now that we know that we can see them and do it, we can, allow that light to continue to spread and illuminate what's really there. And
one thing that was kind of interesting is, as I expanded outward, which souls do when they die, that was the big, big, big picture. But before that, during this week of premonitions that I was going through, several times I noticed that the interface between physical reality and spirituality is the very quantum level. It's the smallest of the small, below, smaller than subatomic particles. That's the interface. That's how we transform from spiritual, non-physical into the physical. It's at the smallest level. So I experienced the very, 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 very small as the interface, and the very, very, very big as the infinite mind of God, infinite possibilities. I'm extremely grateful.
So do you see the soul that you speak about, this great expansion, but then as part is getting compressed into a human body, and the quantum level of a human body is where the interface is allowing us to almost hook up to a physical being? to allow us to experience through the five
Yeah.
senses. How do you see it all
Yeah.
playing out? How do you see the soul? How do you see the interface? Do you think the chakras are those interfaces as well, allowing us to experience life? Like, how do you look at it all?
Well, that's the interface. Excuse me, the smallest of the small. And as we become human and older and smarter and wiser, we can learn a lot of things. We have free will. We can do this or do that because free will is the most powerful gift of humankind ever. We may not be able to change our situation. We can't change our genes. We can't change history. We can't change the past. There's a billion things we can't change, but free will allows us to always be able to change by choice how we look at the situation. Are we being thrown into hell, or are we being given a opportunity to avoid it? So free will does allow us to interpret things, and that's the most important thing. It ain't our situation; it's how we look at it. Period. And I've gone through my share of depression and fear and doubt and anxiety, um, but I don't feel any of that anymore. I just don't. No matter what happens, I see it as a challenge. In 77, I'm going through some physical challenges and so forth, medical. Uh, but I look at everything as how much I can learn from it, how much I can grow, how much I can evolve. Because why not? There's not a complaint department, but there's a billion enlightenment departments. And that's what I choose to tap into and encourage other people to. Because there's no actions, there's no
Sure.
coincidences.
So how do you view the soul? Like, if somebody says to you, what is the soul and what is its purpose? Why is it here? Like, how do you reflect upon that from your experiences?
The soul, well, first of all, I see everything as infinite mind, God, infinite power, seeing itself in every way possible. And part of those ways are you and me and individual souls. We got the choice or the opportunity to be individuals by infinite mind. I don't think there's a time it started. I think because time is an illusion, time and space are connected together. But once you're outside of time and space, there is no time. Everything's infinite. Everything's happening at once, or everything's happening over infinite time. But yeah, the soul is infinite mind's way of allowing us to individually experience life, experience uniqueness. Because no two souls are the same, no two experiences are the same, really. So it's really a beautiful gift. What it is physically, it's an essence that comes into physical incarnation to experience our uniqueness, to grow, to evolve, to see, to learn, to love. Hopefully, or you can be a jerk and go out and hurt people. But that's not a good choice.
Mm-hmm. It's all free will, isn't it? What do you
All
feel
free will.
then of the role of guides? Your guides? Do we all have guides? Communication with guides?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely. We have more guides than we know. We have guardian angels. We have so many different guides, so many levels of consciousness. I mean, if you just look at the life on this planet, there's everything from amoeba to us. There's billions of different levels of physical manifestations, animals, life. And that's only a drop in the bucket compared to the different levels of consciousness that exist. So yeah, our soul gets to come here, gets to experience, gets to use free will. And again, that's the most powerful thing because we get to choose whether we want to grow, evolve, learn, benefit, or do none of the above. Free will is the biggest gift. And if used properly, can be the greatest asset of human beings. If used not properly, it can be quite a devastating thing, as we've seen throughout history with dictators and killers and cruel people. But I can't stop that. The only thing I can do, and we all can do, is hopefully raise our consciousness. I mean, I look at Jesus Christ, one of the greatest gurus ever, the Son of God, so to speak, and what? He was tortured and killed. I kind of wish he would have snapped his fingers and said, "Hey, we're going to put an end to this crap." But that wasn't the way it's supposed to be. You know, we're supposed to go through this chaos.
Have you?
That's how we learn.
Absolutely. Have you had any more experiences like that since that time?
Not to that level, but I experience my guides all the time. And yes, we all have our guides. But from 1977 onward, when I realized how real they were, I asked them to help me all the time. And they will and they can, but they can't barge in your free will. You have to ask them to help you. That's why it says, ask and you shall receive. You don't get everything, but you do have to be proactive because they respect the fact that we have free will. They're not going to come in and tamper with it, but they do tap us on the shoulder. And everybody on this planet has guides, and all our guides are tapping us on the shoulder. But we have free will, and we get to decide whether to pay attention, grow, benefit, make it a better world, or none of the above. It's choice. That's the power of free will, choice. We get to tune in or tune out. We get to grow and be better or not. But again, there's no neutral. We're either going up or down. And cycles in life, sometimes we go up a little bit, go down a little bit. We all go through cycles. But what's important is the overall trend, not the, because if you flatline or descend, you're not growing. If you ascend, you're still going to go through cycles, but you're headed upward by choice, by practice, by belief. Same way you hit a home run, same way you make things work, you believe it. And if you believe it and try it, you're going to hit more home runs, have more success, have more happiness, see more, connect with your guides. Not everything, but it's kind of a numbers game. 8 out of 10 is a lot better than 0 for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. An image of a stock chart just came in because people invest in the stock market. They always think it's just going to go straight up, so it just goes up and down, up and down. But you look at the trend over time, and it's going in a certain direction.
Mm-hmm.
And our awareness and consciousness and our life experiences, I kind of look at it just like that as we move forward.
Me too. That's a good example because it really is. You're going to be, and there's days it'll drop 10 points and there's times it'll drop 1,000 points. And I guess converse too goes up and down. But that's life. Life is cycles. If it weren't for cycles, life would not exist, period.
So,
and we would never grow.
Excuse me. Another question for you then is, what I'm curious about is those premonition and psychic abilities that kicked in the week before you got hit by the car. And what's happened with those since? Did they evolve? Did they deepen with you? Do you still use them to this day? Like, do you still have these premonitions come in?
Yeah, but thank God they're much more subtle. They're not so overwhelming. They were so overwhelming at that time, as if to say, we're going to take you to the extreme so you see how much you or anybody can pick up, and then we're going to bring you back down. It's like, which is a lot more comfortable because I couldn't handle the intensity anymore. I went through a week of it, and then I was terrified. Like I said, crying and screaming. And at the same time, I felt so enlightened, but I couldn't deal with the extreme anymore. It's like, I give, help me, bring it down to normal. So I got to ride through the extremes. I got to ride the infinite mind. I came back, and yeah, I still feel that. I still know that. I still talk to my guides. I ask them all the time. They're my best friends, and they don't call me on the phone. They don't call anybody on the phone. But, for example, if you think, I use this example, you don't even have to believe in spirituality. If you think, I want to learn to play piano, I want to learn to play piano, you'll flip on the TV and you'll end up on a piano player. You'll notice your neighbor down the street practicing the piano. Those aren't accidents. Those are because you're tuned into that thought. And so there's no accidents or coincidences, but there are different frequencies, different situations we can tune into by choice, by practice, and sometimes just by sheer fate, which happened to me. I had no idea before this that I would go through something like this, No idea. But once I did, I realized, wow, maybe it's a good thing they didn't tell me in advance, because I would have probably really, I may have not signed the dotted line. Wait a minute, I got to go through that intensity. I think I'll postpone it. It just happened because I was destined to see that and learn. And like I said, I'm extremely grateful. I wish I could take other people to ancient mind and back, because you'd conquer fear, you'd conquer doubt, which I pretty well did. Nothing really scares me anymore. Nothing blows my mind anymore. Nothing really 100% surprises me anymore. Uh, and that's kind of a comfortable place to be in. I get curved balls, but I just don't get freaked out anymore. Why? Use your mind and your heart and grow and evolve and learn. That's why we go through things. And there's no limit to how much we can grow and evolve and learn. There's a limit to how fast you can drive down the highway or how many years you live, but no limit to how much we can grow and evolve. And that's why I encourage other people to think in those terms. It makes life better. It makes you better. It's a win-win.
Absolutely.
Win-win.
Do you still work with people? Do you do readings or anything like that? Like,
Yeah, I still do readings. I learned a method called lithomancy in 1980 from a very gifted psychic. I'd never seen this. I started giving readings in the early 70s with regular playing cards. And in 1980, I met a lady who did a reading for me this way. And she showed me how she did it. She showed me her system. I'd never seen it before. I liked it because I used 16 stones. 10 of them are based on planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. And the other 6 are love, life, luck, commitment, timing, and place. And most of them I do them on the phone now. I don't do in-personal readings. I've got back problems. It's hard for me to move, so forth. But when I do them on the phone now, I hold these stones and charge them up and have the person say drop, and I drop them into a circle of leather, and I read them like a clock and interpret what they mean. And of course, nobody can tell you everything, but I get pretty positive response because I'm pretty good at it. And I've asked my guides to help me over and over and over. Ask your guides, folks.
does that book you're pointing at, Lithomancy, teach you how to do it?
Yeah, it's up. It's got I got the pages glued up. Yeah, it's about a 150, 200-page book about how to do it. I think.
No, that's cool.
And I've got this one glued together.
So
the
if people want to
pages
find
are
out more
long.
about that, they can actually go and get your book and learn how to do it. Is that another?
Absolutely.
And I'm guessing.
In fact, you can find out about me by going to GarryWimmer.com, GarryWimmer.com, GarryWimmer.com. Leave the L out. I've also been an actor and a writer and a musician, but there's a link there for lithomancy.
Right.
That explains the process I use. But you can buy the book. You can buy either of these books on Amazon or Kindle.
So with that technique, do you like pose a question first, or like there's something you want resolution on, or is it more of just a reading where you're just open to it, or a bit of both?
I basically go in with an open mind, and I look at the stones and sort of let them tell me how to interpret it. Now, there's a lady who taught me this named Alice Worrell. I met her in 1980. She showed me this system. And for many, many years, I helped her with her car. And her, she had a lot of physical problems, and I helped her with her bills. And she was always grateful and kept saying, "Oh, I can't pay you back, Garry." I said, "Alice, all I want is when you pass over, become my guide." So she's my guide now. She taught me this. I put a little stone out to represent her, pointing at me when I do a reading. Before I do a reading, I use a deck of cards and always ask my guides, including her, if they're with me. And of course, they always confirm it and say yes, but it's nice to get that confirmation, So, I feel her talk to me.
And your other book, A Second Eternity, that's about your whole near-death experience and everything. in that, I'm assuming.
Correct. It takes you from the day it started, about 1977, January, into January 1977, through this experience. And it's got a lot of different things I went through. I just mentioned one or two of them. Um, how I was feeling people, seeing things, um, and how it was, you know, sort of scaring me. But at the same time, I kept feeling like there's something going on here. I can't end this. Wasn't a button I could push to stop it. So I had no choice but to kind of go for the ride. And thank God I did, because the ride was certainly beautiful. But it was pretty scary too, until I finally overcame all fear and doubt after the guides above me just took away all the fear, took me to heaven back, brought me back. And like I said, I was in the middle of the street, got up to my feet, wasn't even scratched or hurt, cops, ambulance, police. So I believe in miracles. And I encourage other people to too. Believe in miracles, believe in your power, believe you can learn, grow, believe you can talk to your guides. Just like a home run, you believe you can hit a home run, you're going to hit more than if you think you're going to strike out. Because if you think you're going to strike out, you will. Life will prove the power of our own intentions. Always is. Either immediately or eventually. Free will, folks. Think big.
Free will, think big. I love it. That could even be a T-shirt.
It would be. It'd
that'd
be a good one.
Hey, free will, think big, mate. Gary, I think that's a great place to wrap up the podcast, my man. I just want to thank you for coming on the show today, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you, mate, and your conversation and what you're about and the message you're putting out there. And I have no doubt everyone listening to this today would have got a lot out of it. For everyone, just say your URL one more time. Is it GarryWimmer.com? Is that correct?
Yeah. Correct. Garry Wimmer, GarryWimmer.com. That'll take you to my homepage. It's a dated website, but it works enough for me. There's an actor link, a writing link, a musician link, which I don't do much of that anymore. I still write a lot. I don't play music. I don't do any acting anymore. But there's also a link for lithomancy, and you can see my website. You can buy both of these books on Amazon or Kindle. And I'm thrilled to be with you, man, and extremely grateful for you inviting me on your show. Thank you. You're welcome,
Gary.
Much.
All the best, my man. Thank you so much. Links will be in the show notes for everyone, wherever they're listening to this channel. All right. Much love, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Stay empowered. Love you.